This is it, Dolphin fans. Welcome to the latest edition of Dolphins In Depth. We are at the critical point of the Dolphin season. I've always circled this Houston road game as a situation where we'll learn if this Dolphins team are contenders for playoff spot or pretenders. Big matchup this Sunday in Houston. Joining me is DJ Bien-Aime, ESPN's Houston Texans beat writer. I hate beat writer because I think it's a minimalistic title. Expert. Let's call you the Houston Texans expert. DJ is also a South Florida native, a Miramar product. Miramar High, right?
I graduated from Pace, but I dabble in both Miami and Miramar a bunch. Because remember, I'm Haitian, so I was always in North Miami a lot. Like a lot.
Okay.
A lot.
yeah. So my humble apologies. I know you was a Pace product.
Yeah.
But also a closet Dolphin fan. So what's the pain? What's the pain been like this season? Just watching the season with and without Tua.
So without, it's actually easy. Like if he's not playing, I'm not watching. Honestly, I'm not about to waste my time watching Tyler Huntley and Skylar Thompson and Tim Boyle. Are you crazy? Come on now. But watching them with them, obviously the first 2 weeks were kind of spotty. But then since he's been back, he's been kind of on a heater. So it kind of every time I talk to my friends about him, I'm always like, hey, I know they're not a legitimate AFC contender, but I feel like they got the answer at quarterback, and watching the Dolphins with Tua is entertaining, and that's all you can ask for at this point in the season, right? They're not going to the Super Bowl, they're not going to the AFC Championship game, so it's really how can their quarterback give you an entertaining product, and he does. So that's all I'm looking for the most part. So I know he's not the issue. I know he's a solution. He's not Ryan Tannehill. Tannehill wasn't the solution or the problem. I know Tua is the solution. So it's really, can you build the right team around him? So that's kind of what been my viewpoint of the Dolphins this year.
Yeah, I don't think, as impressive as he's been, and he's challenging right now to break the completion percentage record. Hey, buddy. He's challenging right now to break the completion percentage record. But I will say this: I don't like the offense. I don't like how it's evolved. I get it; it's efficient, but I'm sorry. You want me to pick that offense or the one that was number one in the NFL last year that produced the most big plays, averaged 5 yards per carry, had a one running back scored 21 touchdowns?
For sure.
I get it. Defenses have adjusted to how you played and how Tua plays, and this is what you need to do to have sustained success.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it brings you long-term success in terms of beating teams and beating good teams. But we shall see, because the Houston Texans, this is the first time you can say, because I hate the whole narrative of, they can't be good teams. Because when they beat the Rams, and the Rams were on a 3-game winning streak, and now the Rams have a winning record and are in the playoffs. When they beat the Rams Rams were a playoff contending team, and they still are a playoff contending team.
Right.
So and I look at it. Always look at NFL teams like, you don't know what a team is going to look like on Sunday based on Toronto Armstead might not be playing. Somebody like Zach Sealer might suffer an injury at practice and totally drastically change your defense or your offense. You never know. So it changes the complete complexity of your team. I'm curious a little bit, but I getting to the point, Houston is a winning team. They are pushing for their division championship. I think they got a tough road because that is not an easy schedule.
Right.
They might look at Miami as, hey, this is a game we got to have. And the Dolphins are also looking at it as, this is a game that we have to have if we want to be a playoff contender. But Houston's a good defense. good quarterback, not having a great season, good quarterback, physical run game. And this is and it's on the road. Cold weather is not going to be a factor because it's a dome stadium. It's just can you handle the noise and can you handle the moment? And unfortunately, this Dolphins team has not been able to, but Houston hasn't exactly been able to show that they can finish things either.
Yeah, and I was gonna throw in it's not gonna be loud. Like you don't have to worry about like overly loud crowd noise because Houston, the Texans fans, they're just like Dolphin fans to an extent, where like they don't show up at the beginning of the game for the most part. I'm not saying that Dolphin fans don't show. I think Dolphin fans are better than Texans fans, but point being, the dome being loud isn't gonna be like a deterrent factor. Now, maybe in the second half it could be because that's when they start to really feel the wind. But I would say, Houston is I would classify them as an above average team. Obviously, they have a winning record, but their plus minus point differential is only 20, which is towards the bottom of all the teams that have winning records. They just beat the Jags by 3. Like they don't have a lot of convincing wins. They kind of remind me of they're a little bit, fair or not, they're a little bit like the Dolphins of last year in the sense of like they've only beat one team with a winning record, I believe, which is the Buffalo Bills. Obviously they beat them, but even that one, they almost choked that one away. But when they played the Lions, they lost. When they played the Packers, they lost. Even though they even lost to the Jets on the road. Even though the Jets don't have a winning record, but point being, like, they don't necessarily beat. They haven't beat like the other good teams that they've seen. They haven't beat them. So the Texans are kind of a flawed team, like most teams, right? There's no perfect team out there, but they have fatal flaws that's going to prevent them from going where they think they can go, and the money that they spent that told the world where they want to go. So this matchup is a matchup, in my opinion, that both teams have strengths that they can really exploit on the opposite side. And whoever can exploit them the best will probably be able to win this game. This isn't necessarily one of those games where, like, if you exploit our weaknesses, we'll still be fine. This is one that if you exploit our weaknesses, you'll be able to win the game and maybe even be able to win it handily if you're able to consistently exploit it.
So you look at the Houston Texans secondary as a weakness of that team?
So I don't think Derek seeing the Kamara weaknesses. I think everybody else is a weakness. You know what I'm saying? Like their safeties. Well, they have a young bull from USC, Kalen Bullock. He's a ball hawk, but he's okay in coverage, and you can't put him down the box. So you have Eric Murray, who is he's a solid NFL safety, but he's been a backup majority of his career. You got Jimmy Ward, who's a little bit older. He's still a little bit of a crash dummy, but he's older. So that's gonna be an issue. Them being without Aziz, who's kind of their best middle linebacker, who can kind of be decent in coverage over the middle. Well, he's pretty good in coverage over the middle. You remove that, you also lose Jalen Petrie, who Jalen Petrie isn't, their nickel, isn't necessarily the best covered guy, but he's no slouch over there. So losing both of those guys I think that could benefit right into Miami's hands, to be honest. And I also think that
they won't have Petrie.
Right. No, they won't have Petrie. He's out with a pec/shoulder injury. And again, Aziz is suspended. So I think what you mentioned earlier, how their down the field passing attack has kind of gone away. I could see it come back this week because if you can get Tyreek or Waddle matched up on the safeties, hit him with either a corner post or a post corner, you'll be able to get separation or hit him on a stop and go, whatever it is. You can everybody has tried to exploit their secondary safeties because DeMeco on early downs loves cover 4. So that they're going to be kind of 12 yards off, flat-footed, having to drive on anything that's in breaking or out breaking. But if you're able to hit them with a double move, you'll be able to get down the field. A lot of teams have done try to do that. Whether the Bills, Jags, the Jags. Well, I would say the Jags twice actually. They did that. And they were able to connect to only one of them, but yeah, like there's opportunities down the field against this defense.
Mm-hmm. But now with the pass rush that Houston seems to be getting, and Miami struggles in the offensive line, and I know Tua is sacked at a very low percentage rate, but a lot of that has to do with the quick trigger and getting the ball
right
out of his hand. I mean, when he's on the back foot of his 3 or 5 step drop, that ball is gone.
Right.
I don't think a lot of the longer, deeper passes are gonna work in that situation. But you never know. Where is Houston in your opinion in terms of defending a run? I know they're allowing 4.4 yards per carry. Is that a product of some teams getting the big runs and it just stacking up, or is there a legit 4.4 yards per carry?
Yeah, I would lean towards a couple of big runs. I would say if they have the Neal, Will, maybe Foley Fatakowski, and Mario Edwards, or some, Tim Settle. That trio of defensive tackles, along with Will and the Neal, they're pretty good. It's when they go to the rotation. The rotation isn't, they don't really have much depth on the defensive line in terms of run stopping. That's when teams can have success. And they do rotate the defensive linemen so they be fresh down the stretch. So I would say that it was more a product of big runs and when they rotate, because they don't really have great depth behind their main 4 or 5. Most teams don't, but them it's more so because guys have gotten hurt, things of that nature. They have older guys at the defensive end spot, so I would say it's more of that. So I don't think the Dolphins will be able to run the ball effectively on the Houston Texans. Maybe when those guys get out, they might be able to. So maybe some of their outside zone runs, but in terms of just getting north and south, I don't think they'll be able to do that. But then again, I don't understand why Mike McDaniel loves to try to get north and south with a guy that's 185 pounds, but that's not there nor there.
You and me both, my brother. It explains a lot why you're averaging, even though he did have the highest yards per carry average in the NFL last year.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I guess. that was last year.
He did have the highest yards per carry average in NFL history last year.
He did, but a lot of those runs were outside zone runs. You know what I'm saying? And you had Isaiah Wynn, you had Connor, you had Robert Hunt. This year, you got Brewer. Brewer's been pretty effective, but your 2 guards, they can't get vertical, and Liam's always on the floor, so it is different.
See, folks, I told you he's a real fan. Where Speaking of offensive linemen, I always keep up with Larry Tunsil just because great guy, hell of a offensive lineman. I think he's been battling a couple of injuries this season. How's he been performing?
He's been good. He's been good this year. I look at some of ESPN's pass block win rates. He's top 10 amongst all left tackles. He's like top 8. I think when it comes to the sacks, so I always ask him how many sacks he's giving up, because he always tell me the real. When he gives up a sack, so online it might say like 2.5 on next gen stats, or the ESPN stats think like 4, but I think it's like roughly like maybe 1, maybe 1.5. I know he gave up 1 against the Jags, because he just kind of held the ball a little bit long and then tried to like scramble outward. It looked like it might have been a 3-step drop, so maybe like 1.5. But he's been playing pretty well as a pass blocker. Like he's easy for sure, like in the discussion as one of the best left tackles in the league, especially as a pass blocker. He's playing at all-pro level, so I think the Dolphins want to get some pressure. They're probably gonna have to add either those stunts at that left side or just have Chop Robinson go against Titus. Even though Titus is pretty good against guys that mainly win with speed and speed and trying to bend around guys. Titus is pretty okay against those guys. There's guys that can give him like a various amount of moves that can give him issues, or do speed to power. Those guys that can give him issues, but speed guys, he usually can hold it on, because he was fine against Michael Parsons.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about the interior of that offensive line, which seems to be just like Miami. Now, you've watched both teams. Who's got a worse interior?
I would say so. Wow, that's tough. Both of them are problematic. I would say Miami has a better center out of the Texans 3, like the Texans 2 options, Juice and Jared Patterson. I would say that the Miami's left and right guard, I don't think it's comparable in pass blocking, but I would probably lean with the Texans interior, because regardless of how it looks, they're still able to help Joe Mixon I think be third in rushing yards per game, or I think top 5 in rushing yards per game. And they got something to do with that. You know what I'm saying? Where the Dolphins can't run to save their life. So I would say it's probably I would lean Miami, but I think Miami's probably better at pass pro. And I actually don't think a pass pro is going to be much of an issue this week because the Texans defensive tackles are okay pass rushers. It's more about the edges you guys got to worry about. Um, I think if
which plays into Miami's weaknesses, considering Patrick Paul and Kendall Lamb are going to be out there starting 2 backups.
yeah.
That's a little bit problematic, but it is what it is. Teams got to battle injuries, and they got to overcome injuries, and they got to play physical football in December, which is what my biggest concern is about this Dolphins team. I wanted to ask you about CJ Stroud, because I remember last year, this is a pivotal moment where the young boy taught me something. I was like, there's no way CJ Stroud was playing that good as a rookie. And I hadn't gone over the film, and you was like, watch the film.
Yeah.
And then I watched the film, and I was like, man, this young man is good. I think I might have put him after 1 year in my top 10 category for quarterbacks. And now we've seen a massive drop off. 89 quarterback rating. That's Ryan Tannehill territory, bro. That's Ryan Tannehill territory. 15 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. That's Ryan Tannehill territory.
Sure.
What has happened to him this year? What do you contribute the sophomore slump to?
So I actually think he's a better quarterback than he was last year. I think he's just having to do more and carry more. And last year he was in a really, really good situation. It was the first time Bobby was calling a play, so opposing defensive coordinators didn't necessarily have the book on how to slow it down, because it's funny the way that, as much as you say like you don't like the way the Dolphins offense is playing, if CJ could play like that, the offense would be much better. So I think it's more like him also having to adjust to how defenses are playing him and Bobby, along with the interior offensive line deteriorating. So he's having to kind of create a little bit more. Also, Nico and Stephon missed a bunch of time together. I think he was without them for like 2.5 games together, and Nico missed 5 games, and then obviously Diggs towards ACL. So at one point he had Tank, Robert Woods, John Mechie, Xavier Hutchinson as his main 4. I don't know many quarterbacks that would have survived with that. You know what I'm saying? Unless they would have had a tight end that could produce. Dalton Schultz is a solid tight end, but he's not necessarily one that you could build a passing attack around. So I think you culminate that along with the interior offensive line and teams having to book out, because CJ Stroud seen the second most dropbacks against split safety looks. Like he's seen the second most in the league behind Joe Burrow. So sometimes for him it's just more like, I had one coach that actually game plan against him that told me that he's a big play hunter and he isn't necessarily a rhythm passer, like a natural rhythm passer. Like he can do it, but that's not naturally what he wants to do. He wants to really hit you over the top. So you got to be able to hit him in the mouth, and 2, so you got to be able to hit him in the mouth to throw him off those spots and things of that nature. So that's what we've kind of seen, because you encompass the fact that the interior offensive line has deteriorated, along with the fact that he wants to get down the field, but teams are playing too high safety looks. The best way to exploit too high safety looks is either take what's underneath, or you have to have good protection to get into the windows that are there for that, which is basically deep over the middle of the field. If you you got somebody clearing out the safeties, right? Because most quarterbacks aren't gonna throw that whole shot. One, like you can get your safeties, you can get your receivers killed. For the most part, we saw Kansas City. I mean, Mahomes do it, and got Mahomes? Yeah, Mahomes do it and got D-Hop knocked out, well, not knocked out, but got him crushed.
Yeah.
So he was saying like the areas that you got to attack, you need time in the offensive line.
It becomes more constraint, and that's where I will say too, I give him credit because his game is elevated. I mean, he's always been a diagnostician, always been accuracy, precision passes, putting ball in position for guys to give you rack yards. But now these windows have gotten smaller, and he's still able to attack them. That's 5 years into his NFL career. What do you think is holding Stroud back? Do you think it's the offensive line play, or do you think it's a sophomore season, teams have a better book on him?
I would say, I mean, he was playing pretty well until like Diggs and Nico got hurt, and then like They play like not the actually the toughest stretch before this stretch, which was the Jets, Packers, Lions, and Cowboys. So they went back to back. Well, they went Packers, Colts, Jets, Lions, Cowboys. So that was really the toughest stretch, and they were without Nico and Diggs for large portions of that. So I think that's what kind of hurt a little bit of his numbers because like he doesn't trust the guys on the field naturally like he did like a guy like Diggs. There are plenty of times where he would just fire at the Diggs because that's Stephon Diggs, right? Same with Nico. And if you're out without those guys, it can get tricky. Also, the guys outside of Nico, because obviously Diggs is out for the year. The other guys don't really beat man coverage. That's what the Detroit Lions did in the second half. They just went man because none of the guys they have to worry about beating them vertically. You know, like Tank had a good rookie year, but I don't want to say he's been exposed, but he has to also now work on his game to improve the fact that anytime he goes against press coverage, he doesn't get enough separation to warrant a target. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying he doesn't get open sometimes. Yeah, but he doesn't win enough to where you can rely on him to consistently be the primary read in those situations. Same with Mechie, same with Robert Woods. So I'm curious to see what Miami's game plan is going to be to go against the Texans because it's pretty clear if you play too high or you just go man across the board, you'll be okay for the most part. You know what I'm saying? So I would say, back to the sophomore slump, interior offensive line, injuries to the receiver position, and teams just having a better book on how to pressure and get to CJ.
Yeah. We're here talking with DJ Bien-Aime. I wanted to ask you about DeMeco Ryans. A lot of times I learn the most about coaches during adversity and during their second season, especially when teams have a book on them and they have a little bit more comfort because I think the first season when they're a rookie head coach, everything is coming at them so fast and they're just learning. I know he made the playoffs his rookie season, but what have you learned about DeMeco as a coach in this second season?
That's a good question. I don't think I learned anything different that I didn't already know. I felt like, DeMeco obviously is a leader of men. I'll give him that. He's a little stubborn, which is fine. I think, sometimes you got to kind of be stubborn to your system and your approach. Because he's very much a I'm gonna die on the sword that got me here, which is fine. He could backfire later on, but
I don't know a head coach that isn't stubborn.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not sure I've ever met one.
Right, like most coaches, they're gonna be stubborn because they believe so much in their philosophy. So, obviously, I think this year he's been less creative on the back end schematically, because he has younger guys back there, and he's really big on he wants his guys to play fast. Because he's right, like defensively, you can play fast, you'll be able to hold teams, you'll be able to make plays on the ball. I think the only issue that he can run into is that his scheme, like, it's pretty simplistic. It's not like super simple, but it's simple enough to where, like, you'll know what he's going to be in for the most part. He's really big on we're going to out execute you, and that to me sometimes can be a little problematic at times.
You want some you want some deception, some shell game.
Yeah, because he did a little bit more of that last year because he had more veterans on the back end. On the youngest guy in the back end was, I think, Stingley, and he plays corner, obviously. But when they had, other guys, across the board, like they were a lot more, they could disguise more. And I think it's more about the they have more vets back there. They got a rookie cornerback, they got a rookie safety, like, that's part of why they've given up the most passing touchdowns in the league because they had to kind of be simplistic for the most part. They can't really get too complex because if they do, then that might lead to other explosives. But again, like I think he's a good coach. His defense is still like very explosive both ways, obviously. But I think this year's been a good teaching lesson of how to like evolve. I think because I think that some of their issues is going to bite them in the butt down the stretch. I don't think he's much of and he'll adjust a little bit, but they don't make that many adjustments at halftime, which is why they struggle so much in the second half. I think they're giving like 15 points in the second halves. And the offense, they're averaging like 9 points in the second half. So in reality, the Dolphins can keep it close. They'll be able to adjust and be able to make a run in the second half. I think because overall, at the start of the game, like you will get overwhelmed by their speed on defense. Like I will admit, that's gonna happen. Like it is what it is. But if you can stay within it, withstand the body blows, like you realize, okay, make these few adjustments, and we'll be able to get on a run and score some points.
All right, final question for DJ, and this is gonna be a toughie, right? You're a diehard Dolphin fan. You follow this team intimately for years. You cover the Houston Texans. Both franchises, in my mind, are pretty much at about the same point.
Yeah.
If you had to wager your life on one of these teams winning the Super Bowl, who in the next 3 years, who would you put your money on?
Oh, I put it on Houston mainly because a lot of their playmakers, right? Like at premium positions, outside of DeMeco, are all young, right? I also think that DeMeco is, because last year their offensive line was pretty good, especially in pass blocking. Like they're never ever gonna like be like, what Chris Greer would say, like y'all more concerned about the O-line than we are. Like, nah, they're always gonna try to improve and bolster the trenches. They're not gonna like. My biggest issue with Mike, sometimes I don't think he forgets, but I think that sometimes he loses sight that this is a very physical game and he can't, try to go all that cute stuff. You know what I'm saying? And I know DeMeco isn't with all that cute stuff,
Yeah.
Like they'll never ever have a 185-pound running back in their staple. They'll never have that. You know what I'm saying? Granted, like they had Devin Singletary, but he was like 5'7", like 199. So like he was more stockier. Like they'll never have, like, obviously they have Tank, but Tank's their only guy under 5'11". Their only guy. You know what I'm saying? Like they're way more on physicality. And again, like a lot of guys are younger, right? CJ's still on rookie deals. Will young rookie deal, Sting on a rookie deal. Like their issues will do them in this year, but they're like a few tweaks away where the Dolphins kind of like have to like revamp the offensive line. Still have to figure out what they're gonna do with the D line. And as you always say, and I believe this too, like if your trenches ain't good, you don't got no shot. So the Texans have fewer holes to fix on it with their trenches, where the Dolphins might have to revamp in like a year, right? Because like how long is Clay's gonna keep going? You know what I'm saying? Like you still out there with Robert Jones and Leon Eichenberg, you know what I'm saying? It's like, all right. Like Liam starting is an indictment on the program itself. Because why is Liam starting at right guard? You know what I'm saying? Like that lets you know that
because you use a high resource on, and you got to justify your decision
for sure. But again, I mean, that's an indictment on the program. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm not saying no team doesn't. Teams don't do that. Teams always do that. But I just can never imagine an offensive line, for at least under DeMeco, not being able to run the ball somewhat effectively at a point or another. Like he's gonna, like their trenches are always, he's always gonna make sure the trenches are good. Because they, like, think about it, they let Jonathan Gennard walk, who had 12.5 sacks, so he can go get DeMeco, right? Like, like the Dolphins, if they had a guy do something like that, that was young, wasn't too expensive to begin with, probably just all right, let's just bring him back. Even though they let Wilkins walk, but paying Wilkins that type of money was crazy anyway. Like, and the Raiders are seeing why, like that's paying them type of money was crazy to begin with. So, but for the most part, though, I think that the Texans are always going to try to reach for being pristine in the trenches, where I feel like the Dolphins are going to reach to be pristine at the skill spots.
It's a philosophical difference, and maybe that's part of the reason one played the game and one has been a ball boy, worked his way up to a coach, and I respect both paths, but
right.
It comes down to philosophical difference. Well, DJ, I appreciate your time. I will see you on Sunday. I don't want a prediction from you because it's too damn early for a prediction on Wednesday. So appreciate you and enjoy Houston. I got love for you, brother. So anytime.
Appreciate
and I know
you,
you got me.
Appreciate you, bro. Yeah, man, I got you. All right.